Joining me now, Richard Haass, the president of Council on Foreign Relations and author of the book, The World, A Brief Introduction, and Megan O'Sullivan, former special assistant to President George W. Bush, former deputy national security advisor for Iraq and Afghanistan, who's on the board of Raytheon Technologies. Welcome both. Richard, first to you. You and Megan you co-authored in the Washington Post a column entitled, "It's Wrong to Pull Troops Out of Afghanistan, but We Can Minimize the Damage." Tell us why you think it's wrong to pull out, first of all.
Well, I thought, Andrea, at a relatively modest price of 2,500 troops, who, thank God, had not suffered a fatality in over a year, at the cost of several $1 billion a year, this was a sustainable deployment. And as you heard from several of the senators and others, the risk of leaving is that you will see the country descend into civil war at a high level. The Taliban will take over large parts of the country. You will see the reemergence of Afghanistan as a terrorism venue that could threaten U.S. interests and other interests around the world. You could have massive refugee flows, a humanitarian crisis. So our position was simply that we thought the costs of staying were far less than the likely costs of leaving. I think it's about that complicated and that simple.
And Megan, one of your goals is to be engaged and support civil society there. President Bush and many others are concerned about what happens to women and girls if the Taliban takes over. This is what President Bush had to say to Hoda about on the Today Show about his reaction when President Biden first notified him of the withdrawal decision.
My first reaction was, wow, these girls are going to have real trouble with the Taliban. And a lot of gains have been made. And so I'm deeply concerned about the plight of women and girls in that country.
You think we should have held off on that decision?
Well, I think we'll see. I mean, the time will tell. I think the administration hopes that the girls are going to be okay through diplomacy. We'll find out. All I know is the Taliban, when they had the run of the place, they were brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Megan, you were so involved in that policy. The First Lady, Laura Bush, did so much to secure extraordinary rights, constitutional rights for women and girls. And now, what is going to happen?
Yes, and you're right to point out how involved the Bushes have remained even after the Bush presidency, and Laura Bush in particular. I think here there are real reasons to be concerned. Certainly, the United States did not go into Afghanistan to secure a better future for Afghan women. We know that, but it is one of the things that we can count to our credit by that engagement. And so I think, it's fair to note there have been very significant changes in civil society, in Afghan society over the last 20 years, very significant positive changes, and that those are in real jeopardy because, as I think many of the earlier speakers noted, senators that you interviewed, the probability of a Taliban takeover is very high. And so I do think it's incumbent upon the administration to think about what kinds of pieces of a strategy it can put in place to try to continue to support civil society groups through aid, through humanitarian aid, but also look at things like our immigration policy and the fact that we have currently 17,000 Afghans who were actively involved in helping the United States as it was engaged in Afghanistan, who are waiting for visas to come to the United States. And so I think that is one of the areas where the United States can take very direct action. It doesn't alleviate the plight of all the Afghans, but it certainly would be a step in the right direction.
And Richard, the president really was ignoring his generals, other than the defense secretary. The generals really wanted him to leave a residual force. What does this say about his relationship with the military going forward?
Look, they're going to agree on some issues, disagree on others. That doesn't bother me. And obviously, we have the powerful tradition of civilian primacy, which is as it should be. And I think here, even though I disagree profoundly with the decision, and didn't find, quite honestly, Andrea, the reasons the president gave for making it persuasive. You had careful consideration. The military and I think some civilians also disagreed with the president, though he's the decider. So you can't fault the decision for a lack of process, a lack of consideration. It just came out where it did, and I hope I'm wrong. I think Megan agrees with me on this. We both hope we're wrong, but we fear that the costs of this decision will come to outweigh any potential savings. But the fact that the president overruled the military in and of itself. That's the way the system's set up.
Navalny, Alexander Navalny, now critically ill, according to his doctors. There's talk, the UN wanting him to be medically evacuated. If he were to die, first to Megan, is there a red line? Is that a red line where President Biden will have to take stronger action?
Well, I think the president has been very careful not to use the phrase red line, going back to the complications that arose when President Obama used that phrase in Syria and then did not take action. But President Biden has said very explicitly that this will be something the United States is watching and that there will be consequences if Navalny dies while he is in captivity. So I do think that he has put Russia on notice. And certainly we saw today, Putin gave his annual speech, a long annual speech to the Russian people. And he said quite clearly, anyone who is meddling in Russian interests or internal politics, as later defined, he even used the word red line, although didn't define it, will come to regret it severely. So I think we're really seeing an escalation of words here because the Biden administration has really kind of taken its gloves off when it comes to Russia. It doesn't feel the need to cultivate a better relationship, although it will try in certain areas to do so. It is more interested in kind of calling the facts as it sees them. And Putin himself is under the most significant domestic political pressure he has been in a long time. Just a year ago, in the same speech, he announced that he was going to institute constitutional changes that would allow him to stay in office, presumably almost indefinitely. And a year later, his fortunes have really changed. He's under real pressure from Navalny and from the economic situation in the wake of COVID. So I do think he feels threatened. I do think he's testing the Biden administration. And, it's going to be something that has an uncertain outcome because it's difficult to really discern where Putin intends to go.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.